You got one more for us?
Another one?
Yeah.
Come on,
People are having a ball, man.
They are?
Yeah.
I'm not.
One more and then we'll hit.
Okay.
All right? Lou Tabackin, folks.
Okay. How do I figure out the next piece?
Folks, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show. We're here on the Upper West Side of Manhattan and joined by a titan of music, Lou Tabackin. Welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Well, nice to be here in person this time. How about that?
You talk about the story of the first time you went to the Dom and ran into Tony Scott there, and ultimately, like, when you mentioned Friedman's name, that's when, if you didn't have that connection in the Army, would he have let you get up there on the bandstand?
Well, let me start from the beginning. You're confusing everybody.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Actually, I met Don Friedman when I was in the Army at the end of my military career, so to speak. And he was playing with Tal Farlow. And I used to go there and play. And Tal was very nice to me, even though I played too much, played too long, and young and dumb, etc. Anyway, I met Don Friedman, and he said, I told him I was coming to New York. He said, we can go to the Dom and play. It's across from the 5 spot. So first night in New York, I forced myself to go because I'm not really that aggressive. But I figured if I didn't go out and expose myself, I'd be stuck in my little apartment, blah, blah, blah. So I went there and I walk into the club and I hear somebody playing the tenor. And it didn't sound very good to me, to my ear. So it gave me a little courage. So it turned out to be Tony Scott playing the tenor. So I said, can I sit in? He said, who are you, man? I said, well, I just got into town. I'm Lou Tabackin. Don Friedman suggested I come here and you would let me play. So I said, let's see what you can do. So I got up on the bandstand and I didn't feel exactly relaxed, and I look out in the front row, there are a whole bunch of guys, kind of like jury, and they're like kind of like a picture of guys with their arms crossed, etc. This is video, right? So
Yeah, dude, people are loving this. Yeah, Kenny Dorham was Kenny Dorham was there.
Kenny Dorham was there, of course. I recognize Kenny Dorham, and I'm playing, and I could actually hear comments while I'm playing. And KD would say, "Yeah, it sounds like you practice."
Which at that point you had been practicing a lot.
Yeah, I had been practicing a lot. I have nothing else to do. So, anyway, I passed the audition for whatever reason, and I was allowed to be a frequent sitter-in or whatever that is. And I mean, can you imagine coming to New York and the first night you play with Philly Joe Jones? I mean, that's not too shabby. So anyway, I started to do that. One thing led to another, and blah, blah,
What I mean, just for even the lay person, not even the musician. I mean, what was that education like? If it was Eddie Marshall, I mean, how would those guys communicate with you if in order to get their point across as a drummer? I mean, what were the lessons you learned the most at the Dom?
I'm not. I don't remember any lessons that I learned. It was more like getting used to playing, and like the thing in New York was in those days that you never knew who was in the club, any club at any given time. It was a more open reality, not so formal as it is today. So no matter where you played, you had to assume that somebody might be out there that you really respect. And or somebody you might even be one of your heroes, or somebody that you kind of emulated. So it forces you to try to be original and try to play good. So that was basically the beginning of that. And it also becomes like a networking thing. You meet people. It's a kind of weird things happen. On the strength of that, I met somebody, another saxophone player. He gave me a gig someplace, So that
The Cab Calloway gig?
No, that was different.
But here's the point: is that there were gigs, right? I mean, there were really
not a lot of gigs. Not really, not many gigs. No, they were. Well, this one gig, it was a guy that played with Les Elgart.
Sure.
So he said, "There's a 2-week tour. If you want to do it, I can't do it." So I did it. It was the first time I did anything like that in my life. We didn't do that, and I didn't grow up with that reality. But it was an interesting experience. That's a whole book. But that was, certain things happen. You meet a lot of people, and eventually things start to happen.
When I talked to Dave Liebman, I mean, and I just want to get your take on this. I mean, this is in the 60s, 65, 67. When did you get out of the Army?
65.
Jazz was essentially a black subculture, and there were cats that, I mean, how was it to assimilate into that culture? Even Liebman said that. I mean, there were not that many white cats that were playing the music.
I didn't think about it, to be honest. It didn't hit. That reality didn't hit till the 70s, the Black Revolution, so to speak, the late 60s, whatever. I'm not good with dates, but before that, man, I didn't feel any draft or anything. And when I was a kid, I played in Philadelphia and played in black clubs.
Spider Kelly's, Peps.
No, well, that was where the Stars played.
Where did you play?
Where did you play?
One
place was called, if I remember correctly, called the Postal Car. Another was called the Sahara. They were like a block away from the main.
The non-famous cats.
So you go up there and you play, and then you go to the Showboat and you hear Coltrane play or somebody play, and you immediately run back to your gig and try to do that. That was the reality. So it was kind of cool, but I played in that environment. I had no problem until it seemed like almost overnight there was a draft. It was like, there was a racial draft. It kind of almost happened kind of overnight. But in New York, I didn't think about it, to be honest. That was a lease of my thought process. I'm just trying to learn how to play and trying to get better, and meeting guys like Kenny Dorman. You know, you play jam session, an old hero of mine, like a kind of a mentor in my young days, Clarence Sharp, C Sharp, used to play there at the Dom, and and he came more like a street person in a way, but he was a really special player. He used to help all the young guys. He'd take us around, and there was no racial vibe. I didn't, Randy Brecker and I talk about some people that were influential in our early years that people never heard of. Trumpet player Curly Walker. I don't think nobody ever heard of him.
Wow.
Bebop trumpet player.
Wow.
He would help us out and be give us encouragement. So I mean, you were talking about the racial thing. I didn't feel it much until, I guess, the beginning of the Black Revolution, so to speak.
And then what was that draft? I mean, how did that optically look? I mean, all of a sudden you wouldn't get called for gigs, or you? It's
not a gig so much as is a feeling. Why is a white guy playing on the stage when there's other guys? If we could get a brother, why are you having? Like
I dig.
And I don't. I can understand it. I can understand all of it, but I didn't have to like it, but I could appreciate it. So that and in later years, it got pretty intense. Like, I remember Randy Brecker and I were playing at the Apollo with Duke Pearson, and we couldn't play any solos. We couldn't stand up and play any solos.
Well, it's good to know some. I mean, it's good to know some of the stuff. But basically, Lou, I mean, I just wanted you to talk about your own inner time feel, because when I interviewed Julian Priester, he would play with Sun Ra before Sun Ra had the orchestra. This was sock hops and fraternity parties, and essentially Sun Ra required that you had your own internal time feel so that it would open up the rhythm section to play melodically, so you didn't have to rely on them as the traditional rhythm section. Were you somebody that was focused on your own internal time feel and not relying on the rhythm section itself?
Well, that's an interesting way to put it. I never heard it put quite like that. I think Sonny Rollins is the king of that. I mean, well, you play with enough bad rhythm sections, you better have an internal time feel, because I always tell people, don't blame the drummer or don't blame the rhythm section. Sometimes it's you. So, I mean, but in the situation, I kind of straddled the free jazz reality, and we played with some guys, and you didn't play for their time feel. Like, drummers that played musically but didn't play, have a great rhythmic reality and traditional sense.
Like Sonny Morgan kind of cats?
Who?
Sonny Morgan? Who was the drummer out of the... Who were some of the free drummers you played with?
Sonny, not Sonny Murray. I played with him once. Sonny, there was another Sonny... what's his name? He played really good.
Yeah, he's great. I can't remember his name right now.
Yeah,
but he's from Philly, I
think. But he played really musically, and and when you realize that it's not going to be the kind of bebop reality you want, but it's cool. You play music, and the inner time. It's an interesting thing. I mean, when I talk to young people, I say, well, okay, suppose you're on the street. Suppose you're on the street, just you and your saxophone case, and you're you're playing, and by yourself, try to get a few bucks. People will drop money in this thing. So you have to leave them with a feeling of completeness, so they can feel the rhythm, they can feel the harmony. They don't have to, it's not you're not playing for scholars, but you're playing. People can feel when you can play a piece, and you can play, imply the harmony, play the melody,
exactly,
and play the a certain sense of rhythm, not just all over the place. So, if that's what you mean by internal time feel, I think it's very important for everyone to have that internal time feel. On the other hand, you can't just have your own time feel and say, okay, this is what I do, take it or leave it. You have to have internal time field that's compatible with other people.
I think about the time when Joe Farrell called you and said, when I'm not or he called Elvin and was like, when I'm not available, let Lou's got to take the gig. Because that dude...
It didn't quite happen like that.
Well, but I mean, but it was, the idea was that you were the first call sub for that gig.
Well, I was, I could put it this way. I sat in with Elvin at this place called Pookie's Pub.
Pookie's, you were rocking. I love that place, dude.
Anyway, he obviously, I guess he liked the way I played or something.
Yeah, he must have,
So he told me, Joe sent me in. And in the meantime, I became Joe Farrell's sub. He used to send me in on, that's how I started to play with Thad Jones and Mel Lewis. I used to play sub on both chairs. And then also he would send me in on maybe a jingle day because I played the flute. So he had somebody. And he was cool. Like, he was known to be not a nice guy. He was not exactly known as a...
Joe was.
Yeah, Joe could be pretty rough. But he liked me, so we hung out together. I'd always have my horn. And he would egg me on. He'd say, hey, why don't you go play with this guy? Why don't you do... So I'd take my horn out and play. I just needed a little encouragement. And I look up and I see Sonny Rollins in the club. I said, oh, shit.
This was Thad and Mel, right?
No, this is just other places.
You never knew who was there. You never knew who was there.
You never know. Well, with Thad and Mel, it's the same thing, but I'm playing I'm sitting with somebody, who was it? Howard McGee was playing this little club. So he said, why don't you go play? I go up and play, and I look up, and there's Sonny. And I said, oh, shit, I better take care of business, and I better not, play any of his shit, just being disrespectful. So all those kind of things happened in New York in those days. It was a great growth experience. You can't get that anyplace else, and that's why there was always a kind of a difference between the local guys throughout the country who played really, really well, and guys that have paid dues in New York. There's a different reality, different intensity level, different. There's a slight difference.
I guess I wanted you to talk. The reason I brought up the inner time field is because, I mean, I don't know if you had a chance to play with Elvin before, but he was basically creating sheets of sound. And now I'm trying to figure out how you acclimated to that. And who was on? Was it Jimmy Garrison on bass? Who was playing bass? Or Wilbur Ware was on bass?
Well, the first time, there were three different bass players that I played with. Was Garrison, Wilbur Little, and one night when I showed up, it was Wilbur Ware.
Wilbur Ware,
that scared me right there. And I couldn't believe it. And the most amazing thing happened. It was, I remember I just gotten another tenor. I bought this tenor from Eddie Daniels, and I wasn't, 100% familiar with it. So between that and being nervous about the whole situation, and I started to play, and the thing that amazing thing was that every note I played, Wilbur made it sound better. He was a total genius. He had and he knew very little technically about music. I mean, he was just he was a pure genius, and you play and it's, oh shit, everything's cool. I can do everything I play is fine. So that was like.
Big shout out to Gloria Ware, by the way, his wonderful wife. Wilbur, George Cables just told me the other day he would walk into the half note just looking like he kind of rolled out of bed, and all of a sudden he's picking up the bass and just on fire. Just such a natural player.
No, he was totally unique, totally special, and unfortunate. He didn't take care of himself, and his problems was horrendous. But if you imagine being a young person playing with those guys, how do you follow that? I mean, that's kind of like, but you have the memory. The memory is there, and it's special.
Well, I guess that's a really interesting thing. What did you take away from those experiences? Like you said, how do I follow that up? But you obviously were like, well, I need to. I'm not sure when did you actually become a leader in the studio after that? After you played with Elvin?
Well, I didn't. I played with a lot of bands here in New York, in
'60s, and that's what I did. I didn't do anything much as a leader, except my residence at a club called the La Boheme, where I played for $5 a night and 6 nights a week. Added up $30. Even in those days, it was not a livable wage, but it had great drummer Jimmy Lovely.
Oh, the best drummer.
He came with the gig, and my job was to go around finding bass players who would play for $5 a night, and that was interesting. I had some pretty good ones too, believe it or not.
Cameron Brown, maybe.
Cameron Brown just came off the boat, so to speak, and he did it. And I think I taught him. He didn't know a lot of tunes. I didn't either, but I knew more than he did. But I taught him "Sweet and Lovely." Until this day, if he ever walks into a club, I'll play that immediately. But I had actually Wilbur did it one night. He said, "I'll do it for. I just need half a pint, and you can pick me up in the cab." And then he spent the whole gig talking about Jimmy Blanton, which I didn't understand.
At the time, you didn't. I mean, he was Wilbur's peer, right? Or was he a little bit older than Wilbur?
Yeah, of course. So anyway, so that was, as a leader, that was kind of my extent of my leader situation. I didn't do much on my own till I left New York.
Yeah, that's the. I mean, I was going to ask you, like Menza. Menza was on the road with Maynard. Was touring relentlessly with him. Did you actually? When was your first? Did you go? I mean, you obviously talked about the pulse of New York, the difference of making it in New York. But did you get road tested at a certain point where you were on the road 150 days a year,
No,
outside of the big band stuff that you might have done with
I
Tosh?
never did that. I did a short stint with Maynard Ferguson. It wasn't an intense road thing. I really didn't. I was like 1966. You know, I did some stuff for him, but I wasn't like an intense road gig. Like I never really did that much of that. So anyway, I played in a lot of bands. I played in, Clark Terry's band, and Duke Pearson was my main band, and I played in Chuck Israel's band, Joe Henderson's band. I was a major sub in Thad Jones' Mel Lewis band. Anyway, I said, why are they calling me? I mean, this is New York. Why am I in all these bands? And I'm not even a great reader.
I would love you to talk like with Joe Henderson. I guess they never told you whether you're doing a good job or not, so you must have known you were doing a good job.
Joe Henderson?
Well, I'm talking. Like, you're saying, why did they call me, right? But then, if they didn't say anything to you after the gig, you said, "Well, I must have done okay."
Well, they called me. I did the job. I mean, but there are other people that could probably done the job. But,
so humble, man. I mean, you're
no,
humble.
I mean, you're playing a big band. I think there was a kind of a cliche that I felt like. It's like if you're white, you're a good reader. If you're black, you're a good jazz player. That was a stigma kind of thing. So I never was a big band player, and like I trying to play jazz, but they think that if, you could read, you're a really good reader. The only time that this reminds me of a story has nothing to do with what we're talking.
Yeah, just riff, man.
It's a stream of consciousness.
The whole show is.
I was rehearsing in this studio called Upsurge, and my rehearsal was finished, and Dizzy comes in with his band. Now, at that time, Dizzy had two baritones. I don't know why, but he had two baritones. So one of the guys wasn't there. So I was there, and one thing I did learn how to do as a young person, I learned how to transpose alto parts, E-flat parts to B-flat, because I had a teacher who taught me how to do that, and because you play in a small group, like a commercial group, and there's a lead alto part, and that's where the melody is. So I could do that. So I'm sitting there next to Moody playing the baritone part, and he couldn't believe it. He thought I was some kind of a genius or something.
Well,
It's not a difficult thing. And they, he was till the day he died. He remembered that. So that's, I don't know why I thought of that. You're talking about being a good reader or playing in bands and stuff.
well, the big band stuff, but the idea is that stigma didn't really apply. I mean, you could play, you know.
Well, I was always trying. I was trying to find my voice. To find out who I was, and I started late. I started when I was 15. So moving to New York from the Army at 25 wasn't a long. I've only been playing 10 years, so it took my development. I'm a believer of the existential concept of in becoming. So my whole life is in becoming. I didn't start out a 4-year-old, prodigy. I had no. I didn't come from a musical family or anything, so I had to make my way, and it took a long time. So I was constantly trying to find, what my voice was, and that still till this day.
Talking to Lou Tabackin here on the Jake Feinberg Show. The inner city gigs that you were a leader on, though. I mean, can you talk about the creative control as a musician that you had in the studios? Steve Swallow talked about being kind of manhandled by Arif Mardin at a certain point when jazz was floating away from popular music and they were really looking for more radio-friendly tunes. He brought a tune in, and Arif started to tell him how to play that tune. He got very surly. It was a Gary Burton date. But with you personally, once you did get in the studio, how much creative control did you have?
I had pretty much total creative control. I mean, even Conquer, which is a little bit, conservative, for want of a better word, situation. Carl Jefferson was the head of it. Decided to do a record. Who do you want to use? I said, well, okay. I came up with a band of Hank Jones, Dave Holland, and I'm really bad with names. A great drummer.
Great drummer. We got to come up with that name. Yeah. So he brought them out to say.
So, this was in. At the time, I'd moved back to New York. So anyway, he was a little bit upset about the cost of musicians and stuff, and tunes being too long. That was a big thing. So I was aware of that. So I mean, that was something you're kind of aware of. So I tried not to go too crazy, but even that was too long. He says, "Could you maybe cut the bass solos?" I said, "Are you kidding?"
Dave Holland, you're not cutting that bass solo, dude?
No, that's...
So that was the extent of it, though. I mean,
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Nobody's in the studio saying you can't do that. I understood the parameters, and I kind of sucked them in a way because maybe I'd start out playing a tune and kind of the way they liked it. I understood the quote-unquote mainstream reality, and then just take it, take it a little bit farther than that. But I mean, it was the good thing about that was they took care of everything. Now you make a record. I mean, it's like you make a record and you have to physically create it, get somebody to promote it, and go through all this bullshit. I mean, it's to me it's unnatural for a musician to have to do that. I mean, you need traditionally you say, okay, you decide on the group, decide on the concept, quote unquote, and do the date, and then you're finished. They do all whatever promotion they do, maybe not great, but it's like the product is done, and move on.
Yeah, I mean, you got to wear all these different hats today. I mean, what is it like? What is your experience like? How many hats do you have to wear, even on this tour that you're going on now, or are you firmly ensconced in whatever?
Well, this time, I haven't been playing as much as I would like to play. So I just decided, well, I'm just going to call a couple places. I called the club in Vienna that I play in. I said, well, he said, okay, you can do 3 nights, blah, 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 blah. And then I tried to follow that up. I had a gig in Budapest, didn't work out, so I stuck in Vienna for a couple extra days, and I go to Paris, play a couple nights, the club I play in every year, Sunset, Sunside, I forget which one I play in. And then my great friend Jean-Louis, who owns L'Archiduc in Brussels, he always takes care of me. I have my French guys in Paris, and they join me in Brussels. I have my Viennese guys in Vienna. Then off to the next gig is in London, Pizza Express, bringing the French guys. Then I go to Rome, play with Roberto Gatto, a couple of gigs, and I go home. But it's all by myself. I'm basically. But the good part is that in the past it was like you're all by yourself, and rhythm section du jour, you don't know who you get. Sometimes it was pretty horrible. I stopped doing it, but now I have developed some people to play with, and it's cool.
How do you see the future of blues melodic music? Especially with the idea of, maybe it's fair to say that jazz education has become an industry, and that there's a little bit of a cookie cutter mentality to it. When the reason the music was so popular at one time is because everybody had their own individual sound. Do you feel like it will come back in some way, shape, or form? I mean, everyone says that things are cyclical, but I just kind of want to get your pulse on it, especially because you're in places that actually support the music, like on this tour you're going on.
Well, it's kind of a loaded question. I mean,
Absolutely.
the point is that before the jazz education, obviously you're on your own in a way. So you learn and you get information from older musicians and more experienced musicians. Play jam sessions and gigs. You listen to records, and it's you take all your influences, you put it in a pot and mix it up, and all of a sudden you come out of it. Influences are there, but you have your individuality. My theory is, today, it takes until you're about 40 for it to come together. It takes a long time. But now, I mean, everything is so. I have a grandson. He plays the alto saxophone.
I seen him play with Gil Goldstein a while ago. He was unreal, man. With Toshiko's daughter, Monday.
Yeah. So anyway, he hasn't been playing that long, but you apply for schools, and there's so much into technical sight reading odd meters, and all this kind of stuff. I said, the key to, it's so important to be able to express yourself through your instrument. The sound is so important. Get a sound that is expressive. The other stuff will come. It's a question of practice. But to be able to, what's the right word?
Express your truth.
I mean, it's like you can play one note and tell the story if you really work at it.
Right.
And that's what's missing. I think that's basically what's missing. What's missing is the story, like Lester Young would say, where's the story? The story, the humor, not a lot of humor. A lot of great, beautiful eighth notes. And so that's, I I don't know. It may change. There'll be a few guys that'll pop up and maybe cause a stir and, you know, help change the direction a bit.
The idea of a humor, though, going back to jazz as a language of its own, we talked before in our interviews about, you know, how formal these concerts are now in many ways. Very serious. You come in, you sit down, you applaud, almost listening rooms. Not to say that these were not like raging parties at the Vanguard with Thad and Mel, but is the humor gone? Is the humor dissipated because of the fact that it's taken on this sort of almost serious, purity test kind of thing?
Well, everybody takes themselves too seriously.
Okay, that's right.
You know, basically, it's great to take yourself seriously. You have to take
Sure.
yourself seriously. But on the other hand, I mean, it's an expression when you play. I look at playing at, quote unquote, performing. It's not a good word, but playing in public, whatever that means, as a Zen experience, because you play. The audience plays a part, not necessarily like screaming. Now, if people scream all the time in clubs, so why are they screaming? Somebody plays and they scream. I said, it wasn't worthy of a scream. All it does is interfere with the next guy who's got to play. The point is, there's giving, as a listener, giving yourself, being a part of the experience. You can feel and understand when the audience is a part of your process. Not just screaming, you play a high note, these go nuts or whatever.
You feel like you can actually feel the collective consciousness being raised?
I had a Zen experience about 4 years ago.
Tell us about it.
I was playing at Berlin with Toshiko Quartet, and I'm doing an introduction to a tune, and I landed on the saxophone middle D, C concert, and I tried to put as much into that note as I could, and I could feel stuff coming into it. It was kind of weird. I could feel almost like energy coming into that note. The note transcended itself, and I said, "Wow, that's great." Now I know that this exists, and it's something to strive for. And if you find you're in the right situation, you can actually draw in the spirit of the audience.
That's beautiful. That's what a lot of my show has become about, Lou. Any chance you could? People are craving a tune, Black and Tan Fantasy. Could we hear a little something right now? I don't want people to think that we're just shooting the breeze, talking to a titan of music here.
Well, I mean, like you're playing by yourself. I don't know if that's appropriate. You getting requests? Is that what
A lot, yeah. People would say, "Let him play, let him burn."
Let him play.
Yeah.
That wasn't the idea. I thought I was just going to talk.
Well, we've done that before,
I
now.
got a proper read.
Yeah, well.
If I know. Let me see.
No, this doesn't sound so bad. Can you talk about working with ultimately? I think this is the question: is that a lot of cats would look at it and say, "The Tonight Show, Ernie Watts, these guys. I mean, they were spiritual musicians. They played the music they wanted to play, but you can make some good bread on the Tonight Show. And you actually made a conscious decision at a certain point. I'm not going to. You said I'm not going to play commercial music. What was that? Can you talk about that evolution of that decision?
Well, basically, it goes back the whole Doc Severinsen thing.
Yeah, Severinsen, yeah.
Can't even say it. Goes back to okay, I'm making $4,000 a year, max at $5,000.
Right.
And Artie Lawrence, my friend,
I love that cat,
he
man.
said he was playing with Doc, and Doc Severinsen was starting this little project, commercial project, obviously. And it required like going out for a weekend or so, play colleges, whatever. So I signed up for it, and there were some really good players in the band. Stucky Young was in the band. And, I mean, it was great from that point of view, but the music sucked, obviously. But
Was Bill Takis in the band?
that's right, Bill Takis was
He's the fucking greatest bass player ever,
Bill
man.
Takis was in the band. Alan Rubin, really wonderful trumpet player.
Dave Bargeron maybe was in the band.
No, not then. So anyway,
Anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
whatever it was, I was doing it, and the band moved to actually, I'm sorry, the bass player was John B. Williams.
Oh my man, I love the cat, dude.
So
John B was on bass for the
so
doc.
John moved to Los Angeles with the band, the Tonight Show band, and I was in New York, going out with them, the group, with Doc Severinsen, occasionally. So things got kind of weird in New York. I mean, I was playing in Duke Pearson's band. He was great to me. Trying to get me a record contract with Blue Note. They weren't hiring any white guys. So all the situations like playing in a band and not be able to play at the Apollo, or playing in Academy of Music in Philadelphia behind Nancy Wilson. I played a solo and people got pissed off because Frank Foster didn't play it.
Wow.
It got to be really.
Wow, this is really fast.
Really terrible.
This was a directive from before the gig. They said, Lou, no.
We couldn't play.
Wow.
So anyway, it was like.
By the way, people are having such a ball. They want you project out your voice a little bit louder. I mean, you love to talk in that mellow jazz tone, but just project a little bit more if possible.
Well, okay. I mean,
I know we're
you asked me to play. Now asked me to.
I'm asking a lot from Lou Tabackin.
You really are.
Yeah,
Okay. Anyway.
Yeah.
It was getting kind of weird.
Yeah.
So John B said, "Why don't you come out to California? That's great. I'm working all the time. Everything is cool." So I said, "Why not?" So I went out there. Doc Severinsen promised me a piece of the Tonight Show. They had a rotation going. Pete Chrisley, Ernie. So anyway, I remember who did I run into? Howard McGee or somebody. And I told him, Vanguard, I told him I'm leaving. He said, "Man, if you can't make it in New York, who can?" I said, "No." It's like they considered a defeat. But anyway.
Well, but you were here for at least a decade, right?
No, I was only here from 65 to 72. 7 years. But so anyway, it was a interesting byproduct. But by taking a Doc Severinsen thing, I started to do subs on the Cavett Show. I did subs on the New York Tonight Show band, which was a great band. That was a class band. It was like the Philadelphia Orchestra of studio bands.
It was like Shaughnessy. Who was in that band?
Well, I mean, it was a lot of guys from the big band period.
Wow.
Al Klink.
Wow.
Tommy Newsom was in the band. Clark Terry was in the band when he showed up.
Brookmeyer?
No, not Brooklyn was in the band. Snooky Young was in the band. I mean, it was a very classy, there was a lot of integrity and I learned a lot. I mean, I wasn't experienced enough, but they were really nice to me, and I learned an awful lot. So my income went from $4,000 to $19,000, which is a big jump. So all of a sudden I get offers for credit cards, which I could never get a credit card.
That's right.
I could actually buy a stereo system. I mean, it was like,
You could actually maybe even like lease get a house maybe.
well, I couldn't get a house. I wouldn't go that far. But anyway, so then eventually moving in '72 to Los Angeles, and I realized reality. I said maybe I made a mistake. It was kind of weird environment. It was culturally different, musically different. Everything was different. But the good thing about it was it forced me to create my own entity. Before I played in everybody else's band, here I had an opportunity to find out who I was, and talking about being a leader, quote unquote. So, and then I started to play with Billy Higgins, which was a real joy, and Shelly Manne. So that was the plus parts, and then the band started out of boredom.
The big band.
Yes, the big band started, and it became like a classic case of turning a negative into a positive. So that was, spent 10 years in Los Angeles, and at a certain point I was able to just quit the Tonight Show thing with Doc Severinsen thing, because I just used that to subsidize my jazz career, basically subsidized the band and whatever. So it served its purpose, and it was on my own.
You described to me in an interview from, my God, 8 years ago, Billy Higgins. It was like playing, it was like water. It was just so flowing music, especially, and well, actually you talked about a buddy of yours who played a gig with him, and your buddy said,
Oh, yeah.
Billy wasn't really bringing it that night, and he said, well, if you're not going to bring it, he's going to play to that level.
No, he plays to your intensity and your level, and he's a perfect accompanist. So he played with Art Pepper, and nothing that much is happening, but because he's not getting it from the guy that's playing, at that point he wasn't playing with much energy. I know when I played with him, he was perfect. Dynamics are always perfect. And like, I had I was doing a trio with him and Charlie Hayden, which was really interesting. I got more harmonic information from Billy
Than Charlie.
He gives you the, he plays the form so perfectly. So like if Charlie's just playing around the tonal reality, I have to be aware if I lay down the changes. You're talking about having a time. What did you say?
Inner time feel. That's right. I'll take that from you.
Okay, you got
inner
it.
harmony.
And when I played with Charlie, sometimes I had to use my inner harmony, or else not. Either way, which was great because I could go either way, and it was fun. And once in a while, I take something a little farther than I want to take it. And I say, am I right? Am I cool? My inner time, I didn't know if I could trust it at that point, and then Billy would just like hit. I said, oh, everything's cool.
Wow.
It's like, so you could be free to try to take it wherever you wanted to take it. And it's a beautiful feeling when you feel like you can try anything and it's going to work out. somehow.
You got a safety net back there that's always going to dynamically though. What kind of dynamic? I mean, it was. Can you talk about the way he played, and also, I mean, did he play a lot on the top of the kit as opposed to using the bass drum four on the floor?
Well, I didn't pay attention to that so much.
You didn't pay attention.
But whatever I felt was like, if I got intense, he got intense. If I got cool, I mean, I found that with Elvin too. When people talk about Elvin, like, you know, if you play with Elvin, he's bashing. You know, in those days it was considered bashing. Now it's not. But it was so intense, and like once in a while I couldn't handle it. I wasn't good enough, strong enough to, you know, to play at a certain intensity. I just scream at a certain point. But sometimes I just get real soft, and all of a sudden, he would just come down and check it out. He'd say, "Well, what's happening down there?" So he was very aware.
Yeah.
And Higgins did that so naturally. He played with so many people, and he could play with any bass player. Drummers complain about this bass player and that bass player. He played with, it didn't matter. He found a way, his concept, his cymbal beat, everything was so open. It could accommodate so much. I mean, it was kind of scary.
Lou, just before we wrap, I wanted to ask you about Jim Keltner used to call Shelly Manne. I mean, he was like a kid.
Who called him?
Jim Keltner, the drummer.
I don't know him, sorry.
Keltner, a very famous studio musician, but he was a jazz fanatic in LA. He used to call Shelly when he was, 15 or 16 years old, and Shelly's wife, would wake him up from a nap, and Shelly would talk to him, and Jim was asking him about what kind of cymbals he needed. I mean, can you talk about Shelly's significance to modern music and like the kind of human being he was?
Well, Shelly was, I mean, as a human being, he was a great human being. I mean, I don't know how to describe it. We need more human beings like that. And
he was an inclusive cat. Obviously, the Manhole was closed. Or did you play? You must have played the Manhole quite a bit.
I didn't play the Manhole.
Really?
No, I was in New York and the Manhole was happening. I played once the second club he had. But that didn't last very long.
We need more humans
Shelley
like
was
Shelly.
great, man.
Yeah.
His sound, or the sound of it, he was so careful about how he tuned the drums, the sound of the drums, choosing a cymbal. We go to a gig and do a sound check at a club, and he would spend like forever just making his drums sound right. How does this cymbal sound? How does this sound? In fact, I have one of his cymbals here. He was a giant. The great thing about him is his fundamental. He grew up in when playing with cats, like he played with the pre-bebop guys and
Hampton. Well, no, not even the pre-boppers.
he played with like Ben Webster and all those guys.
Right.
Colin Hawkins, and he had his he encompassed a lot of music. So and then he got more what's the right word, technical. He started to deal with other aspects of the music, but the fundamental was always there. I remember doing gigs with him, and the bass player would get tired, and they're used to playing in the studios. So I did a lot of duets with Shelly Manne. In fact, I did an album. I did an album called Rites of Pan.
Yeah, I know that one.
We played. I said, "Turn the lights down," and we did a duet, flute and drums. I don't know how long it was, but a substantial part of the recording, and it was just one take. He's perfect. He's a communicator. He's great. It was so different than Billy Higgins, but they were two great. Both of them were so great.
Before I just want to wrap, I'm going to ask you again to just play something for the folks. People had just a ball seeing you, and I just want to wrap with you sending a salvo out to the rest to the world.
To the world.
I know you don't have the perfect read, but it sounds good. Maybe put some blues keep the blues in it.
I always keep a little bit. I mean, I think you published something.
Well, no, I transcribed that thing yesterday. That was Tom Bones Malone talking about any music
I mean, I got in trouble. I'm blacklisted or whitelisted on the Lenny Tristano world.
You got in a fight with him there?
No, I didn't get a fight with him, but I mentioned in an interview that I think one of the problems with that music was that they try to eliminate blackness and they eliminate any feeling of the blues in their music. And
You think that's a conscious thing?
I have no idea.
I agree with you. No, I kind of agree with.
I
Yeah.
had an experience with Warren Marsh that pointed it out to me, and it really just, I couldn't believe the rhetoric that came out of his mouth, and it kind of cleared up a lot about it. I mean, the music could be great, you know, but I always like to hear a little bit of something there, you know, some hint of jazz and blues and touch of blues, touch of, you know, bebop. It has to be some sensibility that makes it jazz music. But I didn't. So they really, somebody wrote something negative about me in a book. One of those guys.
Nothing negative here. So yeah, I mean,
No.
yeah. Yeah, well, play a blues. Finish. Let's finish up. Lou Tabackin. What an
I
honor.
don't take requests, man. I will play something.
One for Billy, man.
I'll play something short. Sorry, fucked up the ending. Okay.
Lou Tabackin, thank you so much for being part of the program, my man. Much love to you.
Okay, same here.
It's the Jake Feinberg Show. See you later.